All right, it's 10:30. Probably try to go ahead and get started here. I'm Jeff Miller. I'm the marketing rep from Kansas. I have Mark Driskell, the marketing rep from Missouri, in here with me today, and we're going to be going over PRF for 2022, a handful of changes. We'll hit on the system. It is being recorded, so if at any time you get kicked off or need to get off, this is being recorded, and hope we'll get it out on. She'll send out an email usually that has the link, and then we'll also get it out there on YouTube, and you guys will be able to watch it or go back to it if you wish to do so. With that, you can see here I'm on the agent portal, and I went to the help library. I went to training from the home as soon as you log in, and I went down to help library, and it brought this up, and I went over here to the search feature, and I typed in PRF and hit apply, and this is the presentation right here that we're going through, the 2022 PRF PowerPoint. Like I said, it is here. It is available for you to, it'll stay here. You can reference back to it. Mark will kind of come in here. You can see there's a PRF checklist and some different things here. Mark will show you a little bit more of this later. For now, I just wanted to show you, like I said, the presentation that we're giving. If you want to reference back to it, what I'm fixing to go through right here is this 2022 PRF PowerPoint. It's available on the agent portal, training, help library, and it'll be here 2022 PRF PowerPoint. With that, I'm going to bring up mine. So now you should be looking at the 2022 PRF Rainfall Presentation. Show your screen. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Like I said, we have moved into the 2022 crop year for PRF. Not a lot of changes this year. We'll hit on those here in a little bit. We were anticipating some more, and basically with the time frame they had and the other changes that came into play this year and all over the crop insurance world, RMA just wasn't able to focus on PRF like they wanted to. Most of you know that they put out a platform last year where AIPs and agents alike could go in and say what they like, dislike, changes they'd like to see in the program. For last year and continuing this year, RMA has, PRF is not allowed to be on the exempt list, meaning that every review that can be done is being done. They're just looking at the overall scope of the program. Like I said, the changes they made this year, we'll go over soon or in a minute, were minimal. But we do anticipate changes to the program. Don't really have an idea, honestly, right now what those could be. But like I said, the changes this year were minimal. The one big change they did make, changing the sales closing date to December 1, I think was a very good change. But with that, PRF, what is it? It's a single peril lack of rainfall only policy. It is available in all 48 contiguous states. It does not cover anything against flood, fire, hail. There's no production that needs to be given. It is not drought insurance, meaning that the drought monitor could show, hey, you're at a very high level on the drought monitor, and it does not mean that you will be getting a PRF indemnity check. Like I said, they measure the rainfall, NOAA does, and that's how the checks come in, not where you're at on the drought monitor. The PRF technology, I will say right here in the middle of the screen, when I started with NAU and pretty much when the policy started, that slide, that third bullet there that says 6,000 reporting stations actually said 3,000 reporting stations. So they are continually adding it on. Now with that, there is not a reporting station in every 12 by 12 mile grid. There isn't one. So they use the Cressman method, and they interpolate what happens between 4 different stations. You know, if there happens to be one in there, if not, they use the 4 closest ones that are reporting that day, and they gauge, what the rainfall was for that day. Not every station reports every day, and so the 4 that they use the next time may not be the same 4 they used the previous time. So it's kind of one of those deals. Is the program perfect?
Doesn't matter what I put it on. I don't got no voice.
We can hear you. But with that, like I said, as far as what they can use different reporting stations. While it doesn't make the program perfect, as they do increase the reporting stations, they are continually making it better and more reflective of the areas. If you're concerned that it might not be reflective of your area, Mark will get into this later. We have the historical indices, and you can look and see how it has played out on your particular ground, or better to say your particular grid. And that's a very good thing to use because it doesn't work for everybody. So it's certainly one of those things that I would certainly utilize our historical indices and see how it performs in your grid. The weather stations, like I said, Noaa monitors those and handles those. The website here at the bottom is a website you can go to. It is not the official source, but it's the best source we have to let you know where those weather stations are. Like I said, if the guy asks you where it's at or how close they are to his particular ground or his grid, you can come here to the website at the bottom and look there. This slide I thought was very interesting, just kind of shows the last 5 years of the program and how it's continued to grow. This is nationwide. This isn't NAU business. This is a national PRF program, industry-wide. Like I said, just an interesting slide, good to see. We all know in most parts of the country last fall, the last 4 months of the year, it was very dry, and the program grew. I mean, it just really did. And you can see why, in 2020, you can see the loss ratio there at 1.32. I mean, it paid out a lot last year. It was on people's minds. I had a couple farmers tell me the almanac said it was going to be dry this year. I'm glad they were wrong in the most parts. I know this is a national call, but in a lot of parts, we had some good moisture. I know the north there wasn't great. But it really expanded the PRF program. And you can kind of look down through there for the last 5 years and see how it's paid out, how it's performed. Something that we'll talk about in PRF. It's Mark says it all the time. It's a insurance policy, not an insurance payment. No matter what the deal says as far as rate of return or how it pays out. I mean, if you look at the historical indices, most likely it didn't pay out 10 out of 10 years. So if you're not willing to get into the PRF policy and get somebody to commit to no less than 3, but 5 preferably, if after 5 years you're not even with the program or ahead, I can understand getting out. But get in, get out, one time, 1 year, and trying to just hit the lottery, it's not really the way the program is designed. And I do not think that is a good way to sell the program. Like I said, when you're talking to your guys, you need to just say, hey, you need to commit to this policy for, give me 3 years, give me 5 years, and allow the policy to work for everyone. So like I said, my 2 cents, I guess, but just a good slide. Like I said, good information, I think. With that, this just shows how the PRF acres have increased. And I think this is a good slide, not only to show insureds, but for you agents as well. As a marketing rep, I'm in your offices, and you're always asking me, how do I grow? How do I increase my book of business? Well, we all know with multi-peril and row crop acres that the only way to do that most of the time is to take it from somebody else. Somebody has to screw up, or maybe not screw up, just, you've got to take it from somebody else. With PRF, it being a new policy, it was a pilot for a long time, and in the 18 Farm Bill, they made it a standard policy, which is a good thing. It's one of those deals where a lot of agents don't want to embrace it. They don't want to learn it. It works quite a bit different than row crop policies, and so they just haven't really grabbed onto it. And I think it's a huge deal. That's a lot of untapped acres that you can go out and visit with your guys about, and new guys, go bring new blood into the program, bring new blood into your agency. The way, with the cap now, the way to grow is to find more acres. And to me, the easiest way to find new acres is in the PRF program. Like I said, I guess a soapbox speech maybe, but it is what it is. There are acres out there. There's a lot of them. And I would certainly encourage you and your agencies to branch out and try it on. Some PRF changes, we hit on those. Like I said, they ended up being somewhat minimal. The big change is right there in the middle. They moved the sales closing date from November 15th to December 1. We're having the acres reporting date, termination cancellation date. Everything's moving from the 15th to the 1st. And I think that's a great thing. It was something, that's been talked about the last couple of years. It's going to, allow to get a little by harvest. We know how hard farmers are to talk to during harvest and show them this deal, and maybe we can get a little past harvest and have some time to still sign them up for this program. As I'm saying that, I want everybody, this is maybe the most important thing that I'll say today. Your premium for the 2021 PRF crop year is still due November 15th. Well, Jeff, right there at the bottom, it says termination cancellate December 1. Yes, it does for the 2022 policy. But for 2021, the policy that you bought a year ago, it is due, if you want to have it next year, it is due by November 15th. Now they have given you till November 15th with no penalties. You pay it on the 15th. There's not going to be any interest penalty or anything like that. The drought notification RMA sent out allows you a free roll until November 15th, but it is only until November 15th. I cannot stress it enough, say it enough. You have until November 15th, with the mail being what it is. I would encourage you to get your guys to go online and pay it online. They can do it in your office. They're using their money. Doesn't matter that they use your computer. You can do the work for them if you want. You're still using their money to pay their bill. So, like I said, the mail it's been very hard for all the money that we're receiving right now. Things are late. We're still receiving checks that were put in the mail September 15th. So, encourage them to pay it online, but know that it is due November 15th. November 16th, they go on ITS. There was an insert that was put into the last two billings that they got that came from us, notifying them of that. Now, I will say it was, government speak. I don't know. It was all there. Layman's terms might not have been there, but the layman's terms are November 15th is when it's due. And that, like I said, that may be the most important thing I say today. 22 rainfall index basic provision changes. This change is first one. We talked about this in the fall update meetings. This was a change that came across on row crops. The veteran farmer rancher, basically, if one of them is a veteran and the other one's a non-veteran, they still can be considered for the veteran farmer rancher discount. So that's a good thing. Just kind of made it standard across the policies. Second part, revised language to clarify the responsibility is on the producer. If he wants to dispute anything, it's on him to start the arbitration process. The other thing this year was they allow for certified organic only on the haying practice. So if you go out to the actuarials and look this up, you can go in there and see on the county-based values, they've got one for grazing, one for haying irrigated, one for haying non-irrigated, and they have a county-based value for haying irrigated and non-irrigated organic also. So it is out there, it is available. Got to have all the same certifications, licenses, still got to do the transition deal. All the same rules that apply to organic apply here. Just know that there are separate county-based values across the board and that organic is available. Something that another good change that I thought was a good thing, the last couple years they've said, I think since 2020, they've said that we can't use the 578 to verify share because they have different rules, whatever the situation may be. Now they've backtracked that and they are allowing us to use the 578. It's just more supporting documentation. It can't be the only thing. Like we're going to look at the lease and see what the lease says, and then for verification, we can use the 578 to help verify what look at the grazing permit, look at the lease, property records, basically letting us go back and utilize the 578, which I do believe is a good change to help verify share. This was something that came out last year. If you're right up next to the ocean or Mexico or Canada, and you're writing a PRF policy, if your grid crosses over the border or crosses out into the water, you would need to come in and use a grid that touches it, but it is entirely in the U.S. Like I said, it's like we cannot insure ground that isn't in the United States. Is really what it's saying. Like I said, the longitude and latitude lines that they overlay the earth with, like I said, they don't know about boundaries and county lines and state lines and water lines and things like that. So just kind of be aware if you're right up next to a border or the water that you, like I said, that your grid ID is entirely in the United States. If it is not, then you need to move in and use one that touches that grid. So something that we talked about last year, just kind of a reminder this year. Noaa data changes, and this has happened, I think it happened like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Basically, if RMA is notified by Noaa in writing of an error in the data RMA published within 1 year of the date the final index was published, RMA administrator will determine if a change is warranted. Just kind of for your information, like I said, I think it's happened once there a year or two ago. One of those deals where if you make a mistake in your agency, you eat it and go on. The government comes back on us and tells us to go get it back. It's not a great deal. It's why we have to also sign a covenant not to sue. It's their bad, it's their ball, it's their game. It is what it is, just kind of for your information. They do have 1 year to go back if Noaa decides that the data they gave RMA was not good, I guess. So important reminders, point of reference. Make sure that we're getting those points of reference. That's something that they're finding in all these reviews, is that the point of references aren't on the ground. The point of reference must be dropped on something that is insured, and we need a point of reference on every non-contiguous piece of ground. If you've got 1,000 acres and it all touches, you only need one point of reference. But if you've got 1,000 acres and 10 different separate fields, you need 10 points of reference. Must be dropped on the actual ground. We have made it a lot easier to do this in Quick River. So like I said, and there are all types of guides. Mark's going to show us here in a little bit kind of how to where to find that, the guides, and how to drop a point of reference. But make sure that your point of reference, like I said, you need one on every non-contiguous piece of ground, and also one, there's a clarification here in a little bit, also one on each different type. So if you have 2 fields that touch, but one's haying and one's grazing, you need 2 points of reference. So like I said, just to kind of for your information, not a new change, but something that's out there. Point of reference functionality in EasyWriter Pro, Mark's going to show us that here in a little bit. Point of reference keying, like I said, Mark's going to walk us to how to drop a point of reference in the system here in a little bit. There's also a tips and tricks and a training video. So like I said, if you miss it or want to come back and watch Mark's or want to go to tips and tricks, there are videos on how to put a point of reference on the policy. And point reminders, leases, and determining share. We talked a little bit ago, about how your leases should say what the share is. We can utilize the 578 again now to help you determine share as a supporting documentation. Make sure that we have our leases in place. We need to, like I said, there was an announcement that came out, I think 2 nights ago. You would have got it between 5 and 10 in the evening that talked about, all reviews have to be done within 120 days, and then you got 30 days after that. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that means that we're going to be doing a lot of these reviews early on in the year that need to be done. And any leases that you have, if you have them signed last year and everything was good, you don't need a new one. But if you're picking up new ground or new insureds, these leases, you need to make sure that your guys have them, and they need to be signed before December 30th of this year. Well, they're in, maybe it's Splint Hills ground and they're not going to get it until May. Well, we'll sign it in April. No, you bought the policy in this year, and we assumed that you had control of it and knew that you were going to have it. So any lease agreements, anything like that, any lease certification forms that you fill out, all need to be filled out, signed prior to the end of the 2021 year. So like I said, lease agreements, cannot talk enough about them. We encourage you to make sure that you have those in place as we head into the new crop year. Lease certification form, I hit on that. It's not a replacement for a lease. It can just, if you can't get a lease, can't get something signed by your insured, it's something to get the information down on, get the legals on. FSA has a great lease. For my own personal policy, I didn't want to type one up. I called them, they sent it to me. It give me a spot to put the legals, both parties, continues in perpetuity. So it is a good lease. It works. It's one that I don't have to go get signed each year. It passes review, I guess. It's probably the best way to say it. So like I said, make sure that lease certifications, they need to give the location of the ground, what the ownership is. These can come down to a case-by-case basis, but boy, make sure that they have some way to prove the ground's theirs, for sure, and know that they have it up front. It's certainly something we don't want to get into in the review process, and know that we do not have control of those acres or cannot prove that we have control. Here's a copy of the certification form. Mark will walk you through where to find this on our system. Important reminders, records show an insurable interest in the livestock. We know that this change came about. Now they're, for grazing, the ownership of the ground doesn't necessarily rely on the ground. You have to have control of the ground, but how much you can insure is based on your share in the livestock. Now, for me, every time I think about this, I'm like, livestock, cattle. Yeah, that's all it is. You got to have cattle. That's not necessarily true. It says livestock. It's livestock. It can be goat, sheep, any livestock. Bessie the milk cow will qualify. RMA is not going to give us a stocking rate. They don't want to say that Bessie the milk cow will qualify, but they're not giving us a stocking rate. And so, if you can prove ownership of livestock, not just cattle, then you at some point in the year, then you can, like I said, you can have the PRF policy and you'll meet their livestock qualification standard. The intended use is grazing and livestock requirement. If insuring on the intended use of grazing, you got to show that you have at some point in the year ownership in livestock. We hit on that a little bit. Acres crossing a state line. This one just says that any acre, if you have contiguous acres that cross the state line, you need to choose the state where the majority of the acres are located. And that's not a change. That's been with us a couple of years now. So just make sure of that. If you've got a guy that crosses the state line, just know that the majority of the acres are located. That's the state and the grid that they will be applied to. Native sod, if you do have native sod, just know that it talks about insurability, but PRF doesn't count. It's got to actually be tilled for it to start counting in your 4 years for native sod. So just something that's out there in those native sod states. Special provisions, like I said, nationwide is the livestock deal for grazing. But in the states of Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, you have to have also show 60 contiguous acres. The reason I highlighted this part in red, and I did not say this out last year, it's one of those deals where I lived through a situation where it affected me. And so basically, if you have two separate parcels, two separate fields, whatever the situation may be, each one, you would have to have proof of ownership of livestock. And then secondly, you have to have 60 contiguous acres. But those 60 acres, you have to qualify on each piece of ground. So if you've got 200 acres and you've got 100 acres over here, or 100 acres over here and 100 acres over there, you qualify. But if you have 160 acres in one spot and then 40 acres over there, the 40 acres would not qualify. Each parcel must be at least 60 acres in those three states, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Just something that, like I said, just more of a clarification. It's been that way. I read it wrong the first time, and so I'm, like I said, when it bites me, I make sure to tell you about it. So one of those deals, it's not a change. It's just something I want to draw to your attention if you're writing in those three states. PRF program review by RMA. We hit on these. They are focusing on them, and it's just basically telling you. I hit on a little bit ago when I talked about how no PRF policy can go on the exempt list. It's the same with annual forage. You're not going to get by. Didn't get by in 21, not going to get by in 22. Every review that can be done will be done. And what they're finding is the big things they're finding that are problems, the points of reference aren't on the actual ground, and you can't prove control of the ground. So we're telling you what the two major problems are up front. We talked about how to get the, what to do about the leases and do that. And Mark's going to show us where to put the point of reference. Just know as we go into this next year, no policies will go on the exempt list. So like I said, any review that needs to be done will be done. And that's kind of what they're hitting on here. There is a 3% mandatory random review selection of all PRF policies by company. 3% of all the PRF policies that NAU has are going to be reviewed. And that goes back to the announcement that went out the other night. I visited with Christina a little bit in our compliance office. And basically what that means is we are NAU once everything's done and, we get into 1st of January, we're going to identify our 3% of policies. And we have 120 days from the sales closing date plus 30 days, which gets us about to May, around the 1st of May, to have all these done. And that's not all the announcements said the other night, but that's the big part of it. And basically what we're telling you guys, like I said, that we need to identify them and the review has to be initiated. Now, she said that we do still have some of these 3% random reviews for 2021 that aren't done. They haven't got us the information that we need to finalize them. All the announcement said was that the review must be initiated, and that's what we will do there in the first part of the year. And the first thing we're going to ask for is those lease agreements or prove control of the ground. So a lot of things we're kind of telling you up front, things to be talking to these insureds about, new ones and old ones alike. Like I said, that's something that we're going to, looks like, spend the spring doing. So announcement to just something to be aware of. And you guys, verifiable records, got to have a lease, or if you own the ground, deeds, whatever it may be, tax documents. These are the documents that you will need if you have any old policies or applications, from 2021, toss them. Here's the new one. We have them out there. They're on the website. Mark's going to walk them to us here in a little bit. You can see the screenshot below showing you in forms in the library, but Mark's going to walk us right to them here at the end of this presentation. So like I said, they are out there. They are available. Anything old that you have, toss them and get the new updated one with the new verbiage. You can go into RMA's website to look into any announcements or things like that. You can link it through our system. You can go straight there. The program, with that, that's a lot of what the changes are. We're going to move into the program now. We kind of know these things. I'm going to move fairly quickly. It's an area policy, 12 by 12 mile grid based on normal rainfall, single peril. Like I said, we're not going to do any production. The big change that we already hit on has been that the sales closing date and acres reporting date has been moved to December 1st. Coverage levels range from 70 to 90%, with a productivity factor 60 to 150%. On the coverage levels, you can move in 5% increments. On the productivity factor, you can move in 1% increments. Mark will show us in the quoter here in a little bit, kind of how to quote one and how to show it. Typically for myself, I try to keep my coverage levels as high as I can, and then use the productivity factors to adjust my premium if we can't afford it. And start at 150 and back it off until they show. Until they can live with the premium. That's not a rule, not written down, obviously personal preference, but I like to keep the coverage levels as high as I can, simply to create more possibilities of occurrence of an indemnity. So like I said, just something that's out there. We've got the grid overview. It is a area type program, but it's not county. It's a little bit smaller, not 12 by 12 mile grid. Acreage reports must have the farm track and field number just the way it would on any other policy. Things that we don't pay out on, we've hit on this: single peril, lack of rainfall, all the things on the left we don't pay for. PRF subsidy there on the right, just kind of for your information. The quoter will do this for you, but if you're interested in what the subsidies are, or cost shares, I think is what they want us to say now, those are available on the right side. Must be in at least 2 intervals, cannot be in any less than 2. Obviously, there's a maximum of 6, got to be in at least 2 intervals that do not overlap. So you can be in January, February, and March, April, but you cannot be in January, February, March. The only way to overlap those would be to change types. Like if you had January, February grazing and then February, March haying, that can be done as long as you have enough ground to not put the same ground in those 2 different types. This is just kind of an example. It walks through, what they bought, how many acres, what the county base value was from the actuarials. You can see that the dollar amount of protection went up to 45.36. Well, the way they did that was they bought the productivity factor up to 120, therefore increasing the county base value. That's kind of what the productivity factor can do for you. It talks about, March, April, what their protection is, June, July, what their protection is. RMA came out with a 95% of normal for March, April, so they bought the 90% coverage level, so no payment went out. And then it was 42 in June, July, therefore causing an indemnity to occur. What I want to bring to your attention to here is, and I've had this come up several times, okay, they bought 90%, came in at 42, perfect, I'm going to get $22,680. No, that's not what that means. I've had them, they get after me sometimes and they're like, well, it came in under, so I get the entire payout. No, you get a percentage of the payout that you were less than normal rainfall that you bought. So just something to kind of be aware of. It's got in their head, that they see that, well, you're protecting me for $22,680 in this interval, and it came in under normal, so where's my $22,000? That's not what it means. Like I said, whatever the factor ends up being, whatever factor you bought, that's the percentage of the payout of the money that you insured for that interval. I haven't personally seen a 0, but when I did this presentation yesterday for the company, a guy said that out in California they'd had a couple of 0s. So not saying you can't get the entire amount, but you're not automatically eligible for it just because you came in under the product or the coverage level that you purchased. Just some good dates to remember: the contract change dates, August 31st, sales closing dates, December 1, that's a change. Cancellation termination date, December 1, acreage reporting date, December 1. Billing, if we ever get back to normal, it's still September 1, would obviously still be due, would be due then, instead of the extensions that we've got the last couple of years for different reasons. Like I said, but for your 2021 policy, I'm going to say it again, it is due November 15th for 2021. Like I said, there'll be a little bit of date changes as far as cancellation termination next year, but the bill will still go out at the same time there at the end of August, and it will be due September 1, barring any new announcement from RMA. Intended uses, we've hit on this: grazing and haying, got to have separate ground for each. Remember that when we're talking about grazing and haying, that it's got to be suitable for the practice that you're putting it in, but you're not tied to that practice. If you put it in the grazing and it's a dry year, it's a wet year, and you need some extra hay, you can go in and hay it. If you put it in haying, maybe you wanted a little more coverage, but it got dry and you needed the grass and you went in and grazed it, that's okay. It just needs to be suitable for whatever practice. It can't be so rocky that it can't be harvested, and it can't be so far from a water source that it can't be grazed. Haying does have both irrigated and non-irrigated. The key word here to remember is, for whatever type you put it under, is that it's suitable for the practice you choose. The practices I hit on county base value, they're available out on the actuarials. You want to know what the county base value is in a county for a type, be it haying, irrigated, non-irrigated, organic, irrigated, non-irrigated, or grazing. These are available in the actuarials, and they are different by county. I mean, like I said, ground in eastern Kansas has a higher county base value than ground in southwest Kansas. It just is what it is. But you can certainly go in and look those up. The quoter's going to bring them in when you're quoting, but you can go out and look them up in areas and have that information if you're interested. Haying, irrigated, non-irrigated, we talked about this. It is different by practice. So as you can see here, it's just some examples talking about, one in Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas, North Carolina, showing different county-based values for grazing, haying, non-irrigated, haying, irrigated. It would also have different county-based values for organic and irrigated and non-irrigated. So just something to be aware of. Don't just think you know one number and it applies to all practices in all counties in the whole state. Just another deal hitting on the different practices, different coverage levels that you can have. We know that you got to be in at least two-month intervals and that they can't overlap. I would encourage you, like I said, to get in as many as you can. You don't want to just bet black 14 and be in January, February and put all your acres there. Well, I guess you got to be in at least two, January, February, March, April. Get in as many as is pertinent to you, that have good payouts. Spread your availability to win, I guess would be the best way for me to say it. Insurable acreage. PRF is the only policy that does not require you to put 100% of the acreage in the policy. We know if you have corn on the policy in County A, that you have to insure all the corn that you put in the ground in County A. Annual forages has the same requirement. Any annual forage crop you put in the ground, you must insure 100% of it. But for PRF, if you've got 1,000 acres and maybe you just want to try it, for 1 year on 500, fine. Maybe you say, well, I don't really mess with these 200 acres. They're not fenced. It's just some ground, rough ground that I got, whatever the deal may be. I want to put 800 acres in. Fine. You do not have to insure 100% of it. Whatever ground you put in it, though, you can only use once, and you would need to be able to prove control of the ground. You can divide the ground. You got 500 acres. You want to put 250 in grazing and 250 in haying. That's fine. These are completely fine. It just for PRF, it just has to be naturally reproducing crops. So what is the grid? It's the 12 by 12 mile grid that we've hit on several times. The word that I should be using is about 12 by 12 miles. If you talk to somebody in North Dakota, it's closer to 12 by 12. But if you talk to somebody in Mississippi, they're like, well, man, down here, it's like 14 by 14. Due to the fact that it's longitude and latitude lines, and the curvature of the earth, when you get right down to the equator, it's 17 by 17. So about 12 by 12 mile grid should be the better way to say it, just so you know. It's like I said, just one of those deals where the curvature of the earth allows for the grid to be a little bit bigger than the 12 by 12. So it's about 12 by 12 is a good way to say it. This is just a picture of a 12 by 12, approximately a 12 by 12 mile grid. I hit on this a little bit earlier. All this is saying is this, in this particular instance, they have chosen two different practices within the same grid. So for your point of reference, you must have two, and that's what the little red plus signs are. Is in this instance, they have allotted ground in two different types, one grazing, one haying, and they have given us a point of reference for each, one haying, one grazing. So just something to kind of remember. Point of references are kind of being hit on in reviews right now. Percent of value. While you are going to tell us the entirety of the amount of acres that you put on the policy, when you actually do the acreage report, you will divide it down by a percent of value. And just so you know, you can't put any less than 10% of your acres in any one interval. That is a nationwide minimum. However, Nebraska, Kansas, you can't put any more than 60% of your acres in any one interval there. South Dakota, North Dakota, you can't put more than 70%. North Carolina, South Carolina, 50%. The quoter's going to recognize this when you pick the state, but just so you know, if you're in these areas and you're riding across state lines, you're like, well, why can I put 50% here and 60% here? It's just different rules by different states. I don't have a good answer for why this is. I just know that the minimum is always 10. And the maximum can change by the state that you're in. They do need to be even numbers, meaning you can't do like 17 and a half if you're trying to divide it evenly. It's going to have to be 17, and then one will have to be 18 or 16. And they do need to come up in at least the two that you're in, 2, 2, 6. They will need to come up to an even number of 100 when you are done. So just kind of the way it looks like when you're in there, looking at the quoter, and Mark will kind of show you that when it talks about percent of value. That's what it's asking for. It's the percent of the total number of acres that you've given us that you're dividing into each interval or mini insurance period. The RMA does have a support tool. It's out there. It's available. We have one. Mark's going to go through that. I do think it's better, whatever you're more comfortable with. We talked about the intervals can't overlap. Got to be in at least 2, up to 6. I would encourage you to get as many as feasible. Just don't want to narrow the opportunity to win, for lack of a better term. Then these are paid out by interval, 45 to 60 days after when the government releases the information. Now I know that they just released one this week that was 78 days in. It's one of those deals where we're being told Noaa is not getting the information to RMA, and when they don't get it to them, they don't get it to us, and we can't get them paid. It's nature of the beast, I guess. County-based values, we hit on these. We talked about them. Different by type, different by practice, different by county and state. So just go to your actuarials. You can look them up. County-based values, like I said, we're just really beating this one to death. We different for organic, haying, irrigated, non-irrigated. Productivity factor, we hit on this one, 60 to 150% of productivity. I had kind of talked about how I like to use this one to adjust the premium. I start at 91.50 and work my way down. Everybody's sweet spot is different in the areas. 85, 150 seems to be very popular. Not trying to push you towards one, just kind of giving you a place to start and narrow it down to what you and your insured can live with. The intervals, like I said, the government, the highest you can go is 90%. Noaa manages it, gets it to the government. Anything under, if you buy 90, anything under 90 would trigger a payment. It does not automatically give you 100% of the liability. It just gives you the percentage below whatever your trigger was, whatever coverage level you bought. The government releases the information, and you can come out here in the actuarials and look it up. Once it comes out, we try to get out an email announcing it. Mark's going to show you a report that you can do as soon as the interval's over with. Note that it's estimated. It is an estimation. Like I said, nothing can be paid out until the government gives it to us. It's just, like I said, the way it is. Application requirements, fill out the application in its entirety, PRF, rainfall, pick a coverage level, pick a productivity factor, pick a type, got to be in at least 2. Don't have to put the point of reference from RMA's website anymore. You can do it out of our website. Mark's going to go over that in a little bit. There is a disclaimer, but that's part of the application and must be submitted. This is an example of a filled out one. I would certainly come back to this presentation and grab it if you're doing your first one or doing your first one this year. It's just a good thing to reference back to. Acreage reports, like I said, you're going to give us those percent of values. Make sure that just like on any other acreage report, you give us share, practice, intended use, longitude and latitude. You can fill these out in the system, makes it a little bit easier. Do not have to insure all acres. We've hit on that before. There is no minimum number of acres in everywhere but the 3 states that we talked about. Now, in Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, they do have a 68 contiguous acre minimum. Sold or leased ground. This slide here and the next one, if a producer has his lease pulled from him and it was outside of his control, and he's going to have to prove that, he can have all indemnities leading up to the end of that. He can have all indemnities leading up to that one, and if he can prove it was outside of his control, adjustments can be made. We can continue to pay it out. But if he cancels the lease, then the other situation is he would have to pay premium for the entirety of the year and would only have coverage through the interval in which he entered into. The other thing is he insures it now. It is grassland, and come May, he's like, I need to tear this up. That is a decision he has made. So if he destroys the acres, and it's their decision, whenever it's their decision, whether it's getting rid of a lease or tearing up the ground, they will pay the entirety of the indemnity, the entirety of the premium for the entire year, and they will only be eligible for indemnities up into the interval that they entered into. So like I said, when it's outside their control, there's some leeway. When it's their decision to cancel a lease or to tear up the ground, they will pay the entirety of the premium for the entirety of the year, but will only be eligible for indemnities into the interval that they entered into. Acres not insurable if it's so steeply sloped or so far from a water source that it couldn't be grazed. Haying if it's so steeply sloped that it could not be mechanically harvested. So like I said, ground, it goes back to the word I said earlier that was on the slide, talks about ground must be suitable for the practice that you are applying for. Units, crop, intended use, these are going to separate them out, irrigated, non-irrigated, share, we're going to separate units. PRF tools, an easy quote. Like I said, the history goes back to 1948. How many rain gauges did they have in 1948? I don't know. I like to get a little closer. Some people like to be in 20. I like to use 10. Sometimes I ask the farmer rancher, how, what's the cycle here where you live? When do you see weather patterns changing? And use theirs. I mean, they live there. They know their ground. But like I said, it does go back to 1948. Mark's going to hit on that a little bit here in the quoter. This is just some screenshots of things that Mark is going to show you in the quoter. I don't want to just pass over it, but Mark is going to go through this live. If you want to come back and look at the presentation to see what capabilities we have, like I said, these slides are here. But with that, Mark's going to show you all this. With that, that's the end of the presentation. Is there any questions, anything that you thought I was going to cover. Like I said, Mark's going to go through quite a bit in the system here now. Anything like that?
Jeff, there is one question in the chat.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Can CRP acres be covered in PRF? No, they cannot. They are already in a program and they cannot be covered under PRF. So thank you for that question.
And Jeff, I don't know if you can see this one. There was also one that asks, what is the FSA lease agreement that you spoke of, the form, and just a little bit more clarification on that one.
Okay. And it's, I think she does say later on that she found it, but found the PowerPoint. Never mind. Yes, I just honestly, I called my local FSA office and I just said, do you have a lease agreement? I can't remember if I called them or walked in the office. And they had one and they just handed it to me. I did not find it on a website. I'm not saying it's not out there, but I just walked into my local FSA and I said, do you have lease agreements here? And they said yes, and handed me a copy of the blank one. And so that is where I got it. Thank you for that question.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go into the system a little bit here. From the dashboard, we're going to go into Easy Quote up here along the blue ribbon. Just select Easy Quote. Make sure you're in the 2022 crop year, since this is the policy we're going to be quoting. All right. The far right tab is your open tab. Those are going to be for any existing policyholders that you might have. From here, if you have somebody that has an MPCI policy who has certified all their grass at FSA, and we can bring that information in through SIMS, there is a way to do that. You would simply open up that MPCI policy and go over here under your edit button and go down to the bottom to create PRF quote. It's going to bring in the SIMS data. You just want to verify that those are all grass fields, but that is a way to quote somebody that doesn't policy. Otherwise, you can simply open up their policy, or we're going to go in and create one from new. We'll go to the MPCI tab. We're going to go in. Our 2022 is already in there. We're going to go into Kansas, where we are sitting today. I'm going to go into Lynn County. So you'd select your state and your county. Crop is going to be pasture, rangeland, and forage. Our interval, this is where we're going to select haying or grazing. That's not going to say hay. Say irrigated or non-irrigated. These are your haying practices. Down below, you have your non-irrigated organic certified, which is specified by OC, and below that would be your non-irrigated or irrigated organic transitional. So if you do have somebody that is doing organic or transition to organic, those would be the haying options you'd select. And down below in the sixth series of numbers, these are grazing ground. So we're going to start with grazing. We're just going to pick an interval. It's going to default to 90% coverage level and 150% productivity factor. I'll show you once we get into the historicals how we can easily change that. Don't worry about the unit information too much right here unless you want to factor it down by share. Below that, we're going to need to select our grid. If you know grid, great. Otherwise, you can select the locate grid ID. You can search this by if I was to go up here to the location and put in a city and state, it will bring me into that. We're in Lynn County, so it's zooming me into Lynn County automatically. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit tighter, and it dropped a pin. Now, if we zoomed in here a little bit further, there's our grid lines overlaid in pink. Sorry, that was a little bit behind. But if we zoomed in here just a little bit tighter, and move that flag, zoom in just a little bit tighter, we could get down to where we get down to a field level. We know where the guy's ground sits, so we can select our flag and we just plant it where we want to go, and it's going to give you the longitude and latitude. This is the point of reference. So you're going to have the grid ID, but also the longitude and latitude. So if you are a non-processing agent, you don't have access to Easy Writer Pro for some reason, this is a way that you can go in. If you're in the quoter, you can go from a standalone version of the quoter if you have that on your desktop, and you can get your longitude and latitude out of Easy Quote. So we're going to go here and click OK. It's going to bring my grid in, and now it's going to tell me the county-based value for Lynn County grass is $46.90. 150% of that number times your 90% coverage level is giving you a dollar amount of insurance of $63.32. It's going to default to 100 acres. You can change that if you'd like. I'm going to plug in 50% for my percent of value just to get us to the historical tab. And this is where we're going to start being able to make different decisions. It brings us into full farm view. Okay, I've got one line there. If I go into the historicals, it now gives us all that weather information that Jeff was just talking about. Over here on the far right, if you want to change any of your intervals, if you want to reset that, this is where you're going to do it. But I'm going to go along here. The very top half of this page is giving us each 2-month mini insurance period. And it's telling us from 2002 down to 2021 what each year looked like. The index, that is, if it's over 90%, you'll know there wouldn't have been a payment. If it's under 90%, it would have triggered a payment. So we can look here and see in January and February, the last 4 years have not paid anything. However, prior to that, there was 4 years in a row that had some really good payments. And this dollar amount of coverage is based upon the coverages today, the $63.32 an acre. This is what it would have paid per acre for that particular year in that particular interval. Down below, we have what the totals are for the last 20 years, how much it would have paid per acre, 20 years combined, just adding all these numbers up, or the last 10 or the last 5 years. And then we have a rate of return feature. It's triggered 7 out of the last 20 years, 5 out of the last 10, and 1 out of the last 5 years. And this is our dollar rate of return. Anything over $1 means you're ahead of the system, ahead of your premium, if you will. So we can go over here, let the farmer make the decision what intervals he wants to be in. Down below that, we have our liability per acre, gross premium, subsidy, and net premium per acre. I'm going to go ahead and just pick another interval of November, December over on the far right and select apply. Now I have my minimum of 2 intervals selected. Once I get to that point and decide these are the 2 areas I want to put my coverage in, if I was to go back to full farm, you would see I still only have 1 line. We changed it this year. You need to go up and hit the supply button right here in the middle. Once we hit apply, you'll now see over to the left, I have 2 lines. And from the full farm view, I now have both of my intervals picked, giving me my totals over here on the right, 100 acres, net premium, and total coverage. A feature that we've had out for a few years now is in the middle, this historical indices. If I select this, I have January and February highlighted right there. Over on the left side, it's telling me how that interval reacted in each of the prior years. The right side tells me how the policy reacted in all the prior years. So if I wanted to play the what if game and say, okay, if I bought this policy in 2017, how would it have paid based upon everything premium and dollar amount of coverage today? If I select OK, in 2017, I would have got $3,370 or a $5.05 rate of return. We can show them 2018, which looks like it was a little wetter, and they wouldn't have got anything in this interval. So we can show this policy for the year, wouldn't have paid anything. So go back, show them the good, show them the bad, show them the last 10 years, however you want to look at it. But this is how we can compare from crop year to crop year. I'm going to go back, and if I select this, I'm just going to, if I drop this down, I'm going to clear the historicals. I would always check these include daily estimates. These are going to give you, when we start running reports, it's going to give us the daily, up to, like we're in the middle of October now, it's going to give me what the interval is for September, October, or October, November up to today. We go back to the historical tab here and we have some new features. The selected interval tab, which is right next to the historical detail, when we select on this, it's giving me my practice of grazing, the grid that I'm in, and my 2 intervals I've selected. This is giving me an overview along the top, a little bit cleaner version of what we just looked at in the historicals. My total coverage is 70-35, but 90% of that is 63-32. If I wanted to go over here on the far right and change that coverage level to 85%, it will automatically recalculate my numbers over here in this column. I can also pare it down by my productivity factor. If I want to keep it at 90%, but maybe lower my productivity factor to get my cost down, this is how you could do that there as well. It's going to go across basically the same information: cost per acre, loss performance in the last 20 years, what it's paid out totals, all the information we kind of looked at before in the historicals. Then down below in the graph version, it's telling us that same information. Anything in green is your net indemnity, which I have selected over here on the left. The numbers in red mean there were no payouts in those years, and my premium averaged out at $6.16 for that January-February interval. If I was to select November-December, it was $7.18. Now, if you look in 2014, it says $4.22. So there was some payout that occurred in 2014. It just wasn't enough to cover the premium. So that's why that dollar amount is a little bit different. This is looking simply at the practice of grazing that I've elected. So if I had haying on this policy as well, this would only give me the practice that I've selected over in the full farm view. I would have had selected haying to use this feature in the selected intervals. If I want to look at both of these intervals combined, I would just hit select interval summary, and now it combines these two intervals. All right, so giving my premium for January, February, and my premium for November, December, and it totals them up down here as well. To the right, same information that's in the graph, but just in a text version, if you will. Over to the right of the selected intervals is this scenario comparison. So maybe I want to go in and I want to add a scenario of a different grid that I might have. I would simply go up and hit add. It's going to bring my attributes box. I'm just going to select a different grid. Hit OK. You'll notice now I do need to pick a different, since I'm in a different grid, I need to pick a different interval over here. So let's just select July, August. Hit apply. Now I have two scenarios that I'm looking at. One is January and February, November, December. One is January, February, July, August. So I can compare right above each other how these policies would react against each other. If I wanted to change, if I decided this was the scenario that I wanted to go with, I could go up here and hit apply, and this will override what I initially put in the system when I first went into my full farm. Or if I decide that the first one is the one I want to go with, I can just delete the second one I added, and I'm back to where I started. From there, the scenario reviews tab, if I had two different practices. So if I had grazing and I had haying, this would now combine both practices together, and I could look at totals for my averages for haying and grazing and what the policy does across the board. Just for time's sake, I'm not going to go in and add a haying interval, but this is where the selected intervals is just the practice that you're in. The scenario review would be both practices together, giving you averages across the board. So that's how we can easily go in, play with this. You're not going to break anything. Get familiar with it. A lot of different ways to look at numbers in here. When we go back to the full farm report, we can go up here to our reports, and we can look at any available reports. One that I like to look at is the estimated rainfall report. We all want to know what constitutes normal. Here's the report that you can run. We're in 2022, so none of this information is filled in because nothing's happened in 22, but I can see what the 2-month historical rainfall is in this grid in each 2-month insurance period. So if a farmer wants to know what constitutes 100% of normal, here's that information in inches. So that's a way that you can run that out of Easy Quote. From the historical tab, we now have another report available to us, and that's the selected intervals report. So basically what I'm showing them there. I can also look at the historical analyzer reports, and I can run these, this historical, basically giving me a printout of what we're looking at there. A little bit confusing, a little bit hard to read. So we now have a new option from the historicals. If I was to go up to the file over here and go down and click export to Excel, I can now create an Excel spreadsheet. The first thing you'd want to do if you're going to do this the first time is go to Edit, down to Preferences, and under General, to the right of that, you're going to have the PRF historical options. So go ahead and click these and enable those, because it's now going to let you, when we go to this Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to show you, it's going to go ahead and give your coverage levels at the bottom and let you change the numbers within that spreadsheet. So if you have a farmer sitting in front of you, you have it saved to your desktop, you don't have to be on the internet to show them this. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. Now if I was to go up and hit File, Export to Excel, and I'm going to bring up the Excel spreadsheet I already have open. And now here's what that's going to look like. You can see down at the bottom, the coverage level that I was talking about, we have 90%, but if I move it to 85, I recalculate all my numbers. Move to 80, it recalculates the number. So a really nice report. Just make sure you go up, edit, preferences, general, and create and select those PRF boxes so that all this function will work. That is about it, I believe, in easy quote that we need to go over. So now let's go back into Easy Writer Pro. And let's look at a couple of the reports that we can run from the Report Center. So if we go along right next to Easy Quote, there's the Report Center. And there's two different reports. There's a search box over here, and if you just type in PRF, these are the reports it's going to bring up: the potential indemnity and the estimated rainfall report. The estimated rainfall, if I open this report up, put in my parameters, I'm going to select Kansas. It brings up every grid in the state, so I'm just going to select one. I have no idea what county it's going to be in, but you would know what grid you want to look at. And then if I want to look at maybe July, August, or June, July, and I can pick several different intervals. I'm just going to put one in there. Now when I look at this, kind of like we did in Easy Quote, note to self, make sure you're in the right crop year. I'm in 22. Nothing's happened in 22. I need to be in 21. I apologize for that. I can go up here under my file, go down to select reinsurance year, go into 21, go quote in 22, run reports in 21. So now we're back to where we started. So we're going to go back to Report Center. Estimated rainfall. Kansas. Select my grid. What interval I want to look at. Select OK. And now for the June-July interval, I'm looking at the rainfall index for those 2 months in 2021 was 83.9, so we know it would have triggered here. The rainfall in inches was 4.86. The historical rainfall in inches was 5.79. So I can see what it would have done in those intervals. So this is a way we can see what it actually rained in any interval we want to look at. It gives 3 of them here: haying, grazing, and annual forage. That's why there's 3 different lines here for when you selected one interval. So like I said, there's a way to look at what the estimated rainfall is. We can now look at the potential indemnity report. I'm going to run, you can look at this by your agency. We're going to our temp agency here. And I'm just going to leave this blank because if you looked at your interval or at your customers, you can see any interval they would have been in that this would have triggered a payment for. Okay. So if I just leave everything here, select keep not applicable, so it's using estimated, and select OK, it's going to bring me a Rocking Arrow Cattle Company. This is Jeff's personal policy. You can see that September and October is on track to pay an indemnity. Now, we are not through this interval yet, but currently we can go over and see what it's trending at. Ending index right now, it's at 86.5, 68.8. He's got different grids. So this grid and this grid are both decent payments right now. And this is showing him what his potential indemnity would be total and what the potential indemnity would be per acre. I do know there's a little bit of, and we're trying to clarify this, when you go in here, it's only going to show you the intervals where a potential indemnity was being triggered. I do think in the past, maybe that was pulling up all the intervals, regardless if there was indemnity or not. We're looking into that to make sure that this report is running correctly, but it is just bringing in any interval that there would have been a potential claim in, if you will. This information comes out 2 to 3 days after the interval ends. So Obviously, as Jeff said, we can't pay them until RMA releases it. Typically, it's around 60 days. This time it was 78 days. But here's a way to let them know that, yes, you may have a payment coming, and here's about where to be. I would not tell them that this is exactly, because RMA can change it until it's official. So those are 2 reports we can run. Let's go in while we're in Easy Writer Pro. Let's look at, Jeff talked about how to run, how to look at point of references earlier. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to go into MPCI. I'm going to look at view policy. I could also do it from the ribbon there. I'm going to plug in my agency code so I can look at all my policies if I wanted. Here's my Rocking Arrow Cattle Company again. If we're going to add point of references, the first thing that we need to do is endorse the policy. So we're going to go up here to the left, endorse policy. Go over to the right of that to the Easy Mapping tab. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So if I'm in here, it's giving me the pink lines here are my grid IDs. So I know where I'm sitting at. To add a point of reference, you can see these blue fields are already on Jeff's policy. Now, if I was to go into the point of reference, each of these would tell me what the longitude and latitude is. Likely from here, you're going to be needing to add fields to add point of references if you have a new policy you're setting up, or one that you're just adding ground to or making changes to. The first thing that you would need to do is actually add the fields to the policy. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here a little bit tighter so I can get down to a field level. I want to go over here to this map layers. I want to turn on all fields. Okay, this way it's going to give me my CLU boundaries. If you don't see the boundaries come up, we're still probably a little too far out. So now you can see the boundaries came up here. I'm just going to select a couple of fields. They'll be highlighted in red, and I'm going to add these fields. Now my fields are added to the policy, okay? I'm going to save those fields. Now I can go up under this hamburger icon and drop it down to point of reference. I'm going to zoom in to where I added these fields, and now over here on the left is the add point of reference. If I select this and drop it, these fields are contiguous. If there was a boundary between them, I need to set up 2, I could just drop 2 pins in there, and you can see that these 2 fields, 9 and 10, are now referenced below. There's my farm tract field number, my longitude and latitude. These are our point of references, and these would print off on our acreage report. So that is how you can go in, add fields, add point of references. You no longer have to go out to RMA's website to do that. We'll go ahead and cancel out of here. I think that is everything in Easy Writer Pro I wanted to show you. We're going to slip over to the agent portal. I want to show you a couple of training spots that you can get this information that we just went through. So cancel out everything here. And we're going to go down and pull up the agent portal. So from the training tab, I could go down to the tips and tricks. This is a great place that Hope and her team put all of our training in here. Anything that you want to look at, there's great videos, great walkthroughs, tutorials in here. Categories, if I drop this down to PRF, these would be all my PRF training. So not only how to do renewal packets, which I need to show you how to do here in a minute. I did not show you everything I wanted to show you in Easy Writer Pro. Everything we went through today, the quoter, how to add point of references, all the tools in here that you would need to write PRF, they're in here, easy access to get to them. Let's look at, let's step back too far. Under company forms, Jeff showed you there earlier where we could go in, go to resources, forms, If I select my all policies and plans and drop that down and just look at my rainfall plans, here's all the forms that I would need. Here's the lease certification form that we talked about, application change forms, acreage reports, everything that you would need in here for your PRF policy, the disclaimers. So that's, go in there, search by these, it's pretty easy to find them. But there's where you'd find your forms. Like I say, if you have old ones, throw them away. They no longer are valid. So go ahead and get your new ones. With that, let's hop right back into Easy Rider Pro. We're going to go into 2022, and I'm going to show you how to print off renewal packets, and that'll be the last thing that we look at today. So if I go up to Documents, Batch Printing, and again, you can look at this by a single policy. You can look at it for your agency. We're going to go ahead and put in our agency code. There's our training agency. Double click on that. I want to go over here to my document and select my renewal packet. Over to the right of there, you'll see that we have the farm track and field number point of reference box checked. If you wanted to see the point of reference and the FTFs, right now they put them in there with a comma in between them. If you want to see them below each other where it's a little easier to read, it does create a little more paperwork. To do that, you could simply click this box here to include that. So now I have my renewal packet. I've got my agency in here. If I add document from here, didn't bring it there. Let's do it this way. Let's look at.
Hey, Mark, I was going to say, I think it's just because your office is Kansas versus the corporate office, but the way you're doing it will work perfect.
Thank you. So there we have our policy selected. Add the document. So there's our document that we're looking for. This is our PRF renewal packet. If I go up to create document, now I have the ability, we have the e-sign that we can send this to. So if you want to be able to email this to somebody for their signature, you'd hit send to easy sign, finish. And now it would have the agent of record, their information in here. You could create new, select your insured, put their information in here, and you could send this to them via email for their signature, send it back to you where you could e-sign it and have it done. So very quick, very easy to do with the e-sign. Again, just create the document, and it's if you wanted to print it, that's fine as well. Otherwise, you could select e-sign and go from there. So with that being said, that is everything that I can think of that we wanted to go through today. I apologize, we went over a little bit. Are there questions in regard to Quoter? Is there questions in regard to, I know we did not go into Quick River. That's another hour training in itself. Go under the PRF, under the tips and tricks. There's a great walkthrough in there on Quick River. So any questions, anything that you're hoping to learn today that we did not go through?
Sorry, we kind of moved back to into the chat. So it says, what was the website to locate the closest weather station? If you can go to the presentation, it was what, 3 slides? Maybe 3 slides in. And the presentation is available under the training tab, and then go down to help library, and it says PRF 2022. And I think it was about the 3rd slide in, and the website for the weather station was right there.
Also under that, when we went into the forms and went to rainfall, one of the links in there brought you up a page that went to climate.gov, and that is where you would go to locate the weather stations close to you. May or may not be any weather stations anywhere near you. But like I said, there's where you can go to. Another question here, RMA, getting the data out quicker. No, we're like I say, it is really their program. We are simply allowed to play in it. So yes, we all wish that it would come out quicker. Like I said, this was the longest we've seen, 78 days. to my knowledge, I've not heard anything, with them doing it any faster. The nice thing is with that potential indemnity report, you can go in there. We know what the index is going to be. We can give the farmer at least a heads up that, that looks like there's going to be a payment triggered. Here's kind of where we think it's going to be at. Keep in mind when Jeff was talking about premium being due, if a guy's in November, December, he says, well, or October, November, or September, October. He goes, well, I knew I had a claim coming, so I didn't pay my premium. In no way will the claim being even out there, and we know there's going to be one, they still have to pay that premium this year by the 15th of November in order for that to not go on ITS. They pay it. We will definitely send them a claim check for any indemnity they might have at those intervals that haven't been finalized yet.
First question here is from Gene. It says, can you have hay covered by forage policy, production policy, and grazing covered by PRF? Not on the same acres. Like you can have if you have multiple acres, but not under the same acres. And then is the disclaimer part of the app? Yes. Is the disclaimers in the app? Basically, you're acknowledging that that it is a group type policy, and that's what the disclaimer is about. So yes, it's part of the application when you print that off. What do we need to advise the insured if they want to start arbitration? What is the procedure? Just said that they had to start. I would reach out to your compliance person in your region. Like I said, in the southern region, it's Christina. Depending on what region you are in, I would reach out to the compliance person, and they should be able to give you email you that procedure to start. Sorry, I don't have a specific deal, but the head of compliance in your region should be able to give you what they need to do to start that.
Really, one of the questions is why it's taking so long for them to release it. It's the government. That's the best answer I got. I know that's not a great answer, but that is the answer. We are really just kind of bound by how quickly they want to get it out. That's as good answers I've heard.
Is there any way to search by legal description? Yes, that is available now. When Mark clicked in the quoter, I mean, obviously you can do it in our mapping system. If you log into a policy and start searching around, you can do it in the mapping program, no problem. But if you're in the quoter, they have added the availability to do that.
Up there where you could type in an address, you could also type in a section, township, range, and it will bring you to that. Searching by CLU, you could do that within. You really can search by farm, track, and field within Easy Mapping. There is a search feature over there, and you can type in a farm number, and it will bring you up all the tracks and fields, or you can search by farm and track, and it will bring you up all the fields within that farm and track. CLU, I mean, that's going to get your CL information. So yes, go to the mapping, that layers button, turn on all policy fields, and there is a search feature there to look by farm, track, and field. Historical tab in indemnity, is that net or gross? It depends, Mary, what you have selected. When we were in the quoter and that historical graph down there below, to the left of that graph, it was going to default to net indemnity, but if you want to just select indemnity, it will take the premium away from it. So you can look at it by total, or you can look at it by net, but it's going to default to net.
And then Emily, we hit on this one a little bit ago, is the disclaimer part of the application? And yes, it's not, you won't get it signed separate. You'll sign it on the application, but it's not a separate form. PRF, what can a rancher see from their portal sign-in? Here, I mean, obviously they can go in and pay their bill. They can go in and see anything that the insured or that the agent has created for them, any forms that you've created for them. The other good thing about PRF is PRF gets them into field insights. And so every field that you have will have a card, just like it does from a multi-peril standpoint, from a row crop standpoint. So they can go in and look at their individual pastures and, see the rainfall. Obviously, they can see wind, but spraying, which I guess spray, if they were going to spray the pastures, they could see, they can utilize everything in field insights. If you have a PRF policy, you can utilize everything in the portal on the app that a row crop person can, even if you don't have any row crops. So, Mary, I hope that kind of answers your question there.
I'm not sure if I understand the question is, how do you show the CLU information for fields that haven't been added to the policy yet? In the map view, it just shows acres. If you highlight a field over there on the far left, there's a little, it looks like kind of a checkerboard part. If you select that, it will give you the CLU information, field acres, those type of things. You can also edit from there. That's before you would add the field. That information is there. I hope that's what you were. I hope that was what you were asking.
The next question from Darcy: can we get the renewal packet with maps? And currently, no. It is a separate document that would have to be printed separately. So we do not have.
Say, Jeff, we did just add a document option to the PRF renewal packet to be able to include the easy mapping acreage report as well, which would show those point of references. It was just really newly added.
Okay, sorry. There we go. So I guess I apologize, Darcy. We do have that. It just came available. So yes, that is out there and available now. Yeah, Peter, I see what you're saying. The lease certification was said not to be a replacement for the lease. What does that mean? Will the actual lease be requested in a review? That's what they're going for. That, you know, they can use the 578 as supporting documentation. So, you know, the actual lease would probably end it. With the lease certification, they're probably going to go to a secondary source and look for the 578. You know, look for something to kind of back up that lease certification. It's really going to be a case-by-case basis. Lease certification kind of, you know, you can say you got that and you've got a great start. It shows that you tried. I would certainly try to get a lease, a complete lease of some kind if possible. Depending on, you know, the problem with some of these guys, you know, farmers are used to going to FSA, and some of these guys that we're going to start picking up, these big ranchers, they will not go in there. And so, like I said, a person's going to have to work on getting these actual lease agreements together. The one thing I will say is, I said that we have multiple ones that do not go into FSA. But if you are signing up somebody new, something that's overlooked sometimes is make sure they have an 80-10-26. And they may say, I'm not going into FSA to sign it. We have canceled policies because of it, because they refuse to go in there. You know, you can get it for them, but you got to get that 1026 on file. Obviously, they still have PRF policy, but they'd lose the cost share. But yeah, like I said, lease certification gets you started, but we would be looking for secondary information there. Where do you go to find this presentation? If you log on to the agent portal and go to the training tab and go down to help library, and then in the search feature, type in PRF and it'll bring it up. It says PRF Presentation 2022. So this presentation is out there, and then Hope will be the YouTube video of everything we went over today, the questions we answered. This entire time that we've been on here is being recorded, and it will be available on a YouTube video later today or probably first thing tomorrow.
I think we just answered the last one about the premium question. It says, what does the interval I have insured for November, December that has not been billed? Like I said, the policy has been billed at this point, has to be paid by the 15th of November. There won't be any interest charged to it this year because of the COVID rules, but they have to pay it by then. Even though they have a November, December, we'll pay them because they won't get that payment until February or March for November, December. So they're gonna have to pay their premium by the 15th, and then we will pay them anything they have coming that hasn't been official yet. They will have that money come back to them in the form of a check.
And then Christian, Mark, like I said, we hit on this one. Like I said, we're just reading down through these, but the CLU, if you go over to map layers and turn that on, all the CLU information, like I said, you should be able to see everything that you want within the mapping system. Yeah, initially, like I said, it's just the acres, but if you turn on the layers, you can turn on additional information.
Yeah, you'd want to let your underwriter know that we have, we need to get that field mapped, and then we need to assign the RLU to it.
Once you map the field, they said that the system will automatically place an RLU on the field. And with that gets us down to the last of the questions in the chat. Hope, is that everything you're seeing?
Yep, you guys did a great job.
Okay, like I said, this presentation is available. The presentation we use is available on the NAU website, agent portal. Go to training, help library, type in PRF in the search feature, and it says PRF 2022. And then Hope will be getting the YouTube video out, like I said, late today or tomorrow. And like I said, everything that we went over. Mark.
No, that's it. Thank you. Sorry we went over time. Thank you for being on here today. Thank you for your business. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your marketer. We'd be happy to help you.